Good morning, everybody. I'd just like to say thank you very much, Jose. Your presentation is the perfect introduction for what I want to talk about. The theme of this conference is digital transformation, successful digital transformation, and specifically how to execute and implement a successful transformation strategy. It's a topic that's pretty close to my heart and something that I've been trying to bang the drum for probably the last 20 years. In this industry, I've spent pretty much 40 years in local media and local search, in local newspapers, in the Yellow Pages industry in the US and in Europe, and more latterly here in Asia. And pretty much since the turn of the new millennium, the local commerce environment, as I see it, has not just been disrupted, but I would say it's pretty much been deconstructed. And the provision of advertising, marketing, and media solutions for small businesses become hugely fragmented. And while traditional media providers have suffered, no group has suffered more than the small business community. And that's really where the perspective that I want to come at from this presentation this morning. So I'm inclined, therefore, to position this presentation as a call for stakeholders, and by that I mean all stakeholders with a vested interest in the local commerce ecosystem, to begin the process of reconstruction in this industry and make it easier for the paying customer, the SMB, to survive and thrive in the new economy. We have to reconstruct, in my opinion, for the following reasons. The number and breadth of media we have today has generally proliferated. It simultaneously led to a blurring of the boundaries between pure advertising and marketing propositions and the hundreds, maybe thousands, of periphery products and solutions that have emerged since the dawn of the digital age. What's more, the supply side of this industry has exploded, as these new products have spawned new cottage industries, managing everything from website design, SEO, SEM, reputation reviews, appointment making, everything, etc., etc. Suppliers of digital products and solutions today include everyone from traditional media, other traditional establishments such as banks, accountancy practices, telcos, utilities, to specialist digital providers such as GoDaddy, Matchcraft, Web.com. Plus, of course, we're now witnessing a major encroachment into the local commerce arena from what I call the A-list of the E-list. And of course, we're all familiar with the likes of Google and eBay participating in the SMB space, but we're now witnessing more of the world's largest digital companies actively pursuing digital strategies that go after the small business. You know, Amazon, for example, in the UK have a very aggressive strategy to get into the local commerce market, and I'm sure that's going to only be replicated worldwide. But what are the consequences of all this massive activity on the small business themselves, especially at a time when it can be confidently argued that they need more help and support from people like us than they've ever needed before? I actively spend a large part of my time these days working directly with small businesses, either those to whom I'm a board advisor, or more recently, a few digital startup companies into which I've personally invested and into which I have an ownership stake. And I can tell you firsthand the impact that all this market disruption and deconstruction has had. In the main, small businesses are highly confused, just to pick up on Jose's point in his research. They constantly receive mixed messages about different products, what works and what doesn't work, and in most cases, SMBs are seeing a declining ROI on their spend, and which for many of them is an increasing spend, i.e. they don't know where to spend their dollars most effectively. And overall, that is creating an effect of lack of trust with us, the media community, high churn, and general disillusionment. And you can see that in our numbers. I don't see a single Yellow Page publisher, or former Yellow Page publisher, or a traditional media publisher anywhere in the world that today has more customers than it had 5 years ago. So it's time that all of us involved in the supply side of marketing and promotional digital solutions for SMBs appreciate what is happening across the globe and to buy into the necessity to transform. But first we have to appreciate the underlying drivers of change and what every company on the planet can no longer ignore is that the modern consumer is empowered unlike they've ever been before. Every customer we see is unique, and the increased fragmentation of media and the proliferation of access channels to information, no two customers are ever likely to act and behave in the same way again. Now, they're commonly referred to as millennials. I refer to them as the I generation. And as Charles said in his introduction, if you think about it for a second, every child, since 2012, every student graduating from our schools, colleges and universities has conducted his or her entire education in the internet era. Free access to online information has been a fundamental component of their learning and development. Their lives are played out on social media, while practically every aspect of their behaviour and interaction with the commercial world is governed by technology. For these people, digital is the default for everything. Their relationship with technology is symbiotic. Not only does technology influence them, but increasingly they are the ones shaping the way that the technology itself evolves. They are the consumers that every company and every brand wants to engage with. With knowledge comes empowerment, and a noticeable characteristic of this demographic is a far stronger sense of control over their lifestyle and their career balance. Another tag placed on this new demographic is the YOLO generation. YOLO being an acronym for You Only Live Once. And listed here, and I'm not going to go through them all, are just some of the characteristics that associate with these highly empowered and influential modern consumers. One of the phrases in there is omni-channel. And every one of us is becoming familiar with today's omni-channel world. These digital-first consumers will switch between devices and channels depending on context, and these can vary between online and offline. The business community, and especially local small businesses, can no longer ignore the impacts of these new consumers or their behaviours. And of course, nowhere is the significance of that digital impact likely to be felt more effectively and more noticeably than here in Asia. I'm not going to go through the numbers, you can see them for yourself. But more than half the world's population resides in this region. But now if you look at the growth, in the 18 months since January 2014, the growth in Asia in terms of the adoption of digital media outstrips that of anywhere else on the planet. Now in a moment I'm going to go through with you what my take should be on what I think the future might be for this industry, and what I believe the entire supply side of this industry can do to try and win back the lost trust and confidence in the small business. But first I'm going to give you just my 10-point recipe for what I think it takes to undertake a successful digital transformation, regardless of your background or your industry. All great companies have a clear vision and purpose. You need to know what it is that you strive to do, know the direction in which you're travelling. What's more, that vision has to be customer-centric. If you look at any great company in the world, they all have one thing in common. They put the customer at the very centre of everything they do. Great vision and great purpose typically stems from strong leadership. Transformation simply cannot and does not happen without being driven from the very top of the organisation. The senior leadership team has to be aligned operationally and with a seamless integrated structure with common goals and shared responsibility. The old silo-driven culture of the Yellow Pages industry as I knew it and the old utility industry as I knew it when I worked at BT simply cannot exist in the modern economy. And it's probably worth adding this to this point on leadership. I saw recently in a study by the Financial Times in London that 95% of company failures can be directly attributed to poor leadership. Number 4, a common mistake in many companies is to employ too many strategic themes, each one accompanied by a myriad of accompanying objectives. To successfully transform, you need to limit your core strategic themes to just 2, 3, maybe 4 big rocks. Any more than that is too many. Again, just look at the world's really great companies. They rarely tend to do more than just one or two things, but they do them really well. They do them better than anybody else. This point resonates with something that Jose was talking about, and something this industry has to do. It has to get back to taking to market a really compelling value proposition. We can't afford to just sell on price. Almost everywhere I look around the world, the product proposition we sell today in this industry is just not good enough. We have to get back to marketing and selling a truly compelling value proposition. And to the marketeers in the room, I implore you, when you get back to your offices, make it your number one product to review your existing product portfolio. Improve it in some way and make your proposition irresistible to your customers. Again, it's an attribute of great market-leading companies that they make their products not just easy for their customers to sell, but they make them easy for their salespeople to sell. And also, going back to a point that came out in Jose's research, please don't overlook the point about back office service and fulfillment. Your back office needs to be slick. That means seamless support infrastructure and internal processes. Ask yourself the question, do your supporting enablers and processes enhance your customer experience? Do they encourage repeat purchase? Do they encourage loyalty or advocacy for my brand? If not, why not? Partnerships and alliances. We live in an age where speed to market is critical. Partnerships and alliances are a key way of doing that. The modern world dictates that you have to be open to partnership and alliances. That's both internally and externally. Great companies continuously improve and evolve. They tend to promote strong innovation cultures, encouraging, promoting and rewarding entrepreneurship across the entire organization. We exist in a world today where modern companies just cannot afford to stand still, and that you have to continually evolve and respond to the changing demands of the consumer. As the saying goes, you innovate or you die. And as it happens, if you do embark on a successful digital transformation, it does bring with it an accompanying culture of innovation and continuous improvement. So you actually improve in many ways. Number 9 in my recipe is, I suppose, stating the bleeding obvious. But it's true. More and more companies are waking up to the fact that in a dynamic, fast-moving world, your people are an appreciating asset. Your people are an appreciating asset, and a key source of differentiation in an increasingly competitive and commoditized employment market. And my final ingredient in my recipe for transformation is probably the most critical one of all, and it comes back to the theme of this conference. Every constituent component in a recipe for transformation is important. But if you don't get this one right, you will fail. Having a great vision and accompanying strategic approach can be completely meaningless if you lack the capability to effectively execute and implement. And I actually love this quote from a former boss of mine who cut her teeth in the FMCG ranks at Procter & Gamble. But no customer ever sees your strategy, only the way you execute it. And to emphasize this point, a great strategy poorly executed is almost certain to fail. Yet even a relatively weak strategy will stand a fair modicum of success if it's properly executed. So let's for a minute now just turn an eye to the future, and specifically what that future might be with regard to this industry. And by the way, when I say this industry, I mean this industry as it stands today, with its great breadth of media and customer engagement channels, and with all the multitude of vendors and suppliers who work within it. How can we work together to win back the trust of the small business? How can we work together to reconstruct this fragmented landscape and get back to being a positive force for good in the local commerce ecosystems? One of the greatest maxims to follow in business I've always found is to learn to wear and walk in your customers' shoes. Right now, I strongly feel that it's incumbent on every one of us on the supply side in this industry to spend a bit more time directly getting to know your small business customers and getting to fully appreciate the many disparate challenges that they are facing right now when it comes to promoting their business in the digital economy. We have to demonstrate a genuine understanding and empathy for their situation and appreciate that the vast majority of small businesses are affected by three significant constraints. Number one, they have a general lack of knowledge and understanding when it comes to digital media and all the different products and solutions that are out there. Why is that? Well, most of them are constrained by time. You show me a typical small business that works a conventional 9-to-5 day. They just don't exist. And typically those involved in the service and trade side of the small business environment work exceptionally long hours. And they simply don't have the time to devote to educating themselves about digital media. And the third biggest constraint they have, of course, is budget. Perhaps the biggest challenge of all. Right now, today, for most of these people, is to know precisely where and how to spend that limited marketing and advertising budget. So as I've said, it's time for all of us to begin that process of reconstructing the supply side of the small business local commerce ecosystem. So let me give you my take on what I think we need to do. We need to collaborate more at every level. We need to partner and work together to build better, more effective, more compelling product bundles that can make it so much easier and simpler for small businesses to derive some tangible benefit from new and potentially confusing digital marketing solutions. Consolidation, in my view, is inevitable, not least because the small business community will demand it. They simply do not want to be confronted by hundreds of different suppliers and vendors. Again, it's all about simplifying the product offering, as Jose touched on. And that's not just the front-end product offering, but also the back-end fulfillment piece of how we produce these products. And if we're collaborating and consolidating more, then it goes without saying that we should be able to communicate better. In ALSMA, in CINDA, LSA, and Kelsey, we have organisations who want to champion what is best in this industry. And I think it's bordering on criminal almost that up until now, we still don't have formal benchmarking and best practice sharing forums across this entire industry. I work across 5 different continents and I see some fantastic initiatives being pursued by different players around the globe. And just think what impact we might have if we pooled all that knowledge and talent and resource that resides within this industry for the better good of the end consumer. But most important of all, we need to communicate common and consistent messages and put an end to all this confusion being experienced by so many small businesses out there. We need to communicate positive messages, work together to build better and more compelling products, regain the trust, and to make things simpler, we have to eradicate the perceived complexity that came out loud and clear in Jose's research. We have to do more to demystify this whole world of digital and get back to packaging and presenting products and modern day media solutions in a format that is easy for them to understand and easy for them to buy. And perhaps in many cases equally as important for your salespeople to be able to sell. And of course we have to do all that with conviction and commitment and to getting back to putting the customer, particularly the small business, at the heart and soul of everything we do and mean it. So I want to close this piece by just providing you with some encouraging insights that I hope will instill within you the confidence that you will want to undertake your own digital transformation journey. I'm going to share with you just a few slides taken from a major study that was conducted a couple of years back by the Sloan School of Economics at MIT in Boston. The study looked at digital transformation in billion-dollar organizations, and it looked at more than 400 companies from different industries and sectors across the globe, identifying a few role model businesses and the factors that stood them apart from their competitors. And the results were pretty impressive. I don't have time to get into the full detail of the study, but essentially they looked at things such as how digital was being used with inside companies to engage with customers, where digital sat in the overall vision of companies, how digital was being utilised in terms of internal back-end processes, the company's approach to digital innovation, leadership attitudes and cultures within the organisation with regard to digital, and perhaps the biggest one overall, the overriding and pervading culture within the organisation with regard to the receptiveness to embrace change. Companies were then plotted on a 2x2 grid with the two axes representing first the level of digital intensity in terms of inside the organisation, and secondly, and perhaps more importantly, the level of leadership, or what they call transformation management intensity. And they defined 4 different categories in terms of that 2x2 box. If you were low on both axes, you were seen as a beginner. If you were low on digital intensity but quite high on leadership, you were seen as being fairly conservative. If you were high on digital intensity but low on leadership, you were seen as a fashionista, just following trends. But those who ranked high on both axes were seen as the digerati. And the most developed and advanced of those companies, as I say, the digerati, they excelled in 6 specific areas. 3 of them customer side, get them all up. 3 of them customer facing, 3 of them more back office. So, how well developed you were in social and mobile, in terms of digital customer experience, in the back office, how well you internally collaborated, how clear and digitised your processes were, and also how well you used data and analytics to make your business succeed. And what Sloan and MIT did was they went back to those companies 12 months later, after they conducted their original study, to measure those companies' results. And some of the numbers were pretty impressive. I'm just going to show you 3 of them. For example, companies that were deemed to be high in digital intensity were seen to derive more revenue from their physical assets than those in either the beginner or conservative segments. But it was those companies that demonstrated really strong leadership and a commitment to transformation management intensity that really scored highly, both in terms of their market valuation, as you can see here, and most notably in their overall profitability. And one might add their positioning in terms of their long-term sustainability. Now I should add here that that MIT study did identify one company from the world of publishing as one of the role model organisations with regard to undertaking a successful digital transformation. And that company was the French publisher Page Jaune, or as they're known today, So Local. So there you have it, if indeed you needed it. That digital transformation is worth pursuing. And I'm going to end my piece with this one quote from the head of the faculty at MIT, George Westerman, who says that no firm is immune from digital transformation. Digital maturity matters, and it matters in every single industry. And there is a clear DNA on how to build it. And I, for one, wholeheartedly agree with him, and I urge you all to take heed of some of his lessons. And I wish you well for the next 2 days. I hope I've stimulated some thought amongst you, and I look forward to spending more time with you.
Thank you, Paul.
Tomorrow.
Thank you.